And now, we may once more return to the symbology of the olden times and their physico-religious myths. Before we close this work, we hope to demonstrate more or less successfully how closely the conceptions of the latter were allied with many of the achievements of modern science in physics and natural philosophy. Under the emblematical devices and peculiar phraseology of the priesthood of old lie latent hints of sciences as yet undiscovered during the present cycle. Well acquainted as may be a scholar with the hieratic writing and the hieroglyphical systems of the Egyptians, he must first of all learn to sift through their records. He has to assure himself, compasses and rule in hand, that the picture writing he is examining fits, to a line, certain fixed geometrical figures, which are the hidden keys to such records, before he ventures on an interpretation. But there are myths which speak for themselves. In this class we may include the double-sexed first creators of every cosmogony, the Greek Zeus Zen (Aether), the Sithonia (chaotic earth), and Metis (the water), his wives, Osiris and Isis Latona, the former god representing also the ether, the first emanation of the supreme deity, Amun, the primeval source of light, the goddess earth and water again, Mithras, the rock-born god, the symbol of the male mundane fire or the personified primordial light, and Mithra, the fire goddess, at once his mother and his wife, the pure element of fire (the active or male principle), regarded as light and heat, in conjunction with earth and water or matter (female or passive elements of cosmical generation). Mithras is the son of Burj, the Persian mundane mountain, from which he flashes out as a radiant ray of light. Brahma, the fire god, and his prolific consort in the Hindu Angi, the refulgent deity, from whose body issue 1,000 streams of glory and 7 tongues of flame, and in whose honor the Sagniku Brahmins preserve to this day a perpetual fire. Siva, personated by the mundane mountain of the Hindus, the Meru (Himalaya). This terrific fire god, who is said in the legend to have descended from heaven like the Jewish Jehovah in a pillar of fire, and a dozen of other archaic double-sexed deities, all loudly proclaim their hidden meaning. And what can these dual myths mean but the physico-chemical principle of primordial creation, the first revelation of the supreme cause in its triple manifestation of spirit, force, and matter, the divine correlation at its starting point of evolution, allegorized as the marriage of fire and water, products of electrifying spirit, union of the male active principle with the female passive element, which become the parents of their Tellurian child, cosmic matter, the prima materia whose spirit is ether, the astral light. Thus all the world mountains and mundane eggs, the mundane trees, and the mundane snakes and pillars may be shown to embody scientifically demonstrated truths of natural philosophy. All of these mountains contain, with very trifling variations, the allegorically expressed description of primal cosmogony, the mundane trees that the subsequent evolution of spirit and matter, the mundane snakes and pillars, symbolic memorials of the various attributes of this double evolution in its endless correlation of cosmic forces within the mysterious recesses of the mountain, the matrix of the universe, the gods (powers). Prepare the atomic germs of organic life, and at the same time the life drink which when tasted awakens in man matter, the man spirit. The soma, the sacrificial drink of the Hindus, is that sacred beverage, for at the creation of the prima materia, while the grossest portions of it were used for the physical embryo world, the more divine essence of it is pervaded the universe, invisibly permeating and enclosing within its ethereal waves the newly born infant, developing and stimulating it to activity as it slowly evolved out of the eternal chaos. From the poetry of abstract conception, these mundane myths gradually passed into the concrete images of cosmic symbols as archaeology now finds them. The snake, which plays such a prominent part in the imagery of the ancients, was degraded by the absurd interpretation of the serpent of the book of Genesis into a synonym of Satan, the prince of darkness, whereas it is the most ingenious of all the myths in its various symbolisms. For one, as Agathodaimon, it is the emblem of the healing art and of the immortality of man. It encircles the image of most of the sanitary and hygienic gods. The cup of health in the Egyptian mysteries was entwined by serpents. As evil can only arise from an extreme in good, the serpent under some other aspects became typical of matter, which the more it recedes from its primal spiritual source, the more it becomes subject of evil. In the oldest Egyptian imagery, as in the cosmogonic allegories of Neph, the mundane snake, when typifying matter, is usually represented as contained within a circle. He lies straight across its equator, thus indicating that the universe of astral light, out of which the physical world evolved, while bounding the latter, is itself bound by Emeft, or the supreme first cause, Hatha producing Ra, and the myriad forms to which he gives life are shown as creeping out of the mundane egg, because it is the most familiar form of that in which is deposited and developed the germ of every living being. When the serpent represents eternity and immortality, it encircles the world, biting its tail, and thus offering no solution of continuity. It then becomes the astral light. The disciples of the school of Pherecydes taught that ether, in parenthesis Zeus or Zen, is the highest empyrean heaven, which encloses the supernal world, and its light, in parenthesis the astral, is the concentrated primordial element. Such is the origin of the serpent, metamorphosed in Christian ages into Satan. It is the odd and the ode, and the hour of Moses and the Kabbalists. When in its passive state, when it acts on those who are unwittingly drawn within its current, the astral light is the Ob, or Python. Moses was determined to exterminate all those who, sensitive to its influence, allowed themselves to fall under the easy control of the vicious beings which move in the astral waves like fish in the water, beings who surround us, and whom Bulwer Lytton calls in Zanoni, the dwellers of the threshold. It becomes the ode as soon as it is vivified by the conscious flux of an immortal soul, for then the astral currents are acting under the guidance of either an adept, a pure spirit, or an able mesmerizer, who is pure himself and knows how to direct the blind forces. In such cases, even a high planetary spirit, one of the class of beings that have never been embodied, though there are many among these hierarchies who have lived on Earth, descend occasionally to our sphere, and purifying the surrounding atmosphere enables the subject to see, and opens in him the spring of true divine prophecy. As to the term hour, the word is used to designate certain occult properties of the universal agent. It pertains more directly to the domain of the alchemist, and is no interest to the general public. Eliphas Levi, the modern magician, describes the astral light in the following sentence. We have said that to acquire magical power, two things are necessary: to disengage the will from all servitude, and to exercise it in control. The sovereign will is represented in our symbols by the woman who crushes the serpent's head, and by the resplendent angel who represses the dragon, and holds him under his foot and spear. The great magical agent, the dual current of light, the living and astral fire of the earth, has been represented in the ancient theogonies by the serpent with the head of a bull, a ram, or a dog. It is the double serpent of the caduceus, It is the old serpent of the Genesis, but it is also the brazen serpent of Moses entwined around the Tau, that is to say, the generative Lingha. It is also the goat of the witch Sabbath and the Baphomet of the Templars. It is the Heil of the Gnostics. It is the double tail of Serpent, which forms the legs of the solar cock of Abraxas. Finally, it is the devil of M. Eudes de Merville. But in very fact, it is the blind force which souls have to conquer to liberate themselves from the bonds of the earth. For if their will does not free them from this fatal attraction, they will be absorbed in the current by the force which has produced them, and will return to the central and eternal fire. This last Kabbalistic figure of speech, notwithstanding its strange phraseology, is precisely the one used by Jesus, and in his mind it could have had no other significance than the one attributed to it by the Gnostics and the Kabbalists. Later, the Christian theologians interpreted it differently, and with them it became the doctrine of hell. Literally, though, it simply means what it says, the astral light, or the generator and destroyer of all forms. All the magical operations, continues Levi, consist in freeing oneself from the coils of the ancient serpent, then to place the foot on its head, and lead it according to the operator's will. I will give unto thee, says the serpent in the gospel myth, all the kingdoms of the earth, if thou wilt fall down and worship me. The initiate should reply to him, I will not fall down, but thou shalt crouch at my feet. Thou wilt give me nothing, but I will make use of thee, and take whatever I wish, for I am thy Lord and Master. This is the real meaning of the ambiguous response made by Jesus to the tempter. Thus, the devil is not an entity, it is an errant force, as the name signifies, an odic or magnetic current formed by a chain (a circle) of pernicious wills must create this evil spirit which the gospel calls legion, and which forces into the sea of a herd of swine, another evangelical allegory showing how base natures can be driven headlong by the blind forces set in motion by error and sin. A meft, the supreme first principle, produced an egg, by brooding over which, and permeating the substance of it with its own vivifying essence, the germ contained within was developed, and Fatah, the active creative principle, proceeded from it, and began his work. From the boundless expanse of cosmic matter, which had formed itself under his breath or will, this cosmic matter, astral light, aether, fire mist, principle of life, it matters not how we may call it, this creative principle, or, as our modern philosophy terms it, law of evolution, by setting in motion the potencies latent in it, formed suns and stars and satellites, controlled their emplacement by the immutable laws of harmony, and peopled them with every form and quality of life. In the ancient Eastern mythologies, the cosmogonic myth states that there was but water (the father), and the prolific slime (the mother, Illis, or Heil), from which crept forth the mundane snake matter. It was the god Phanes, the revealed one, the word or logos. How willingly this myth was accepted, even by the Christians who compiled the New Testament, may be easily inferred from the following fact. Phanes, the revealed god, is represented in this snake symbol as Protogonos, a being furnished with the heads of a man, a hawk, or an eagle, a bull, Taurus, and a lion, with wings on both sides. The heads relate to the zodiac and typify the 4 seasons of the year, for the mundane serpent is the mundane year, while the serpent itself is the symbol of Neph, the hidden or unrevealed deity, God the Father. Time is winged, therefore the serpent is represented with wings. If we remember that each of the 4 evangelists is represented as having near him one of the described animals, grouped together in Solomon's triangle in the pentacle of Ezekiel, and to be found in the 4 cherubs or sphinxes of the sacred arch, we will perhaps understand the secret meaning. as well as the reason why the early Christians adopted this symbol, and how it is that the present Roman Catholics and the Greeks of the Oriental Church still represent these animals in the pictures of their evangelists, which sometimes accompany the four Gospels. We will also understand why Irenaeus, Bishop of Lyons, had so insisted upon the necessity of the fourth Gospel, giving as a reason that there could not be less than 4 of them, as there were 4 zones in the world and 4 principal winds coming from the 4 cardinal points, etc.